Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Dimes, the college basketball podcast. I'm Matthew Brune, and joining me once again is Jamie Shaw. Jamie, today we are previewing the Big East college basketball. How are you doing today?
Man, I'm great. Very excited about this college basketball season. The parity that there is between the leagues and throughout the entire landscape is off the charts. So this is a very exciting time of year because nobody's lost a game yet.
Yep.
Everything's speculation. So many players are on different teams and new teams and stuff, and there's opinions abound as to how it's going to happen. But we don't know what's going to happen until they tip the ball. But man, it's fun to talk about.
Exactly. At this point in the year, everyone's optimistic, everyone's positive. I mean, I go out to any practice, and the coach is like, "Yeah, this is it. This is the best chemistry. The teammates get along great. That's it.
100%.
Everybody's happy." We are doing the Big East today. We'll be doing previews throughout the next 3 weeks. We got ACC next, and the Big 12, SEC, and Big 10 following after that. So we'll space those out over the next couple of weeks. But today with the Big East, we'll be going through our predicted order finish, where the top 4 or 5 teams, go through our sleeper picks, player of the year, coach of the year, freshman year picks, all that good stuff. So we can jump right into it, Jamie, with our we'll do our top 4 teams, because I do think, and just in the big picture, this is kind of a top heavy league. I do think the middle to bottom in this league is better than it was last year. Like some of those, like, or maybe in the past couple years, where it's like, the DePaul teams that were terrible and stuff, and Georgetown teams that were terrible. Like, I think they actually have some players now, but in terms of like top tier, I think it is a little top heavy in terms of UConn and whatnot, and St. John's. So I'll go first real quick. My top 4 teams, and then you'll go, and then we can discuss them one at a time. My top 4 is UConn 1, St. John's 2, Creighton 3, and Providence 4. So Providence is, I guess, the sneaky pick there at 4. Some people maybe have them 5, 6, but we'll talk about them. But that's my top 4 in the Big East this year.
Yeah, no, going back off what I mean, our top three is the same. I think UConn, St. John's, Creighton, pretty universally will be in the top three. I think you have UConn and St. John's that are fighting for top 10 positions nationally. And I think Creighton's probably going to fall in that 15 to 25 range in most preseason rankings that you look at. So I think those three are pretty safely the top three. My 4th team is Marquette with Shaka Smart and all that. We'll get into that as we talk about the teams. But yeah, I agree with you. I think there's a top heaviness here. In the Big East, I think the top 3 teams are top 25 type caliber teams. You got UConn fighting for a national championship. We'll see what Rick Pitino's able to do with St. John's this year as he heavily went to the portal as well. But I think the Big East is in an interesting space and quite top heavy.
Yeah, let's talk about UConn, our number 1 team in this conference. Obviously, St. John's is not far behind. We'll talk about them. But I think, to me, UConn, coming off of the year that they had, where it was obviously disappointing, 24-11 overall, 14-6 in conference, to return Caravan and return Ball and return Reed, it gives you a really strong core for what this team is. And then they obviously added the transfers that we've talked about on prior podcasts with Silas Demery, Malachi Smith, and then Braylon Mullins, who's a talented freshman coming in. So that's kind of the landscape. I think just in general, this UConn team, I'm interested because it feels a lot more like maybe the 2023 team in terms of just the depth and the talent, like the versatility that they have and the way that they can attack people this year. I do think they're going to need players to step up. Like, I think Caravan, I don't want to say he didn't step up last year because I think he was very good, but I think they would love for him to maybe take another step forward in terms of just overall production and play. And he's obviously everywhere on the court. But I'm interested to see if Ball, if Reed, if those 3 returners can take that step forward, because ultimately that's what Dan Hurley has had. He's had players stay in the program, continue to improve, and that's how they get to that championship point. I'm interested to see if Caravan, Ball, and Reed specifically, those 3 can take that step forward from being really good players to being great players. And that's going to be the difference to me. So that's kind of where I start with UConn. Obviously very, very talented, great coach, high expectations. But I do think I'm interested to see who exactly steps up into those, like, into being star players.
So when you look at it, obviously Alex Caravan is the name. He's been through 2 national championships in his career.
Hmm.
He's had a significant role on both those national championships in this past year. I think he's shown us kind of what he is when it comes to being a complementary player, a player who's able to dribble, shoot, pass to an advantage, and elevate the floor of a team. You can be an offensive hub with him throughout the offense. The player that I think is going to benefit the most from this year's team is Solo Ball. I'm very intrigued to see the step that he's able to take. Even last year, kind of in a secondary type role, or even in a not complimentary, but they had about 4 guys that were
Yeah.
averaging, that was able to score, 13, 14, 15 points a game this past season. I think Ball has a chance to take this step out. He averaged 14.4 points on 41% from three this past year. He's an explosive player, and he is a scorer. He is just a flat out bucket getter. You have an Alex Caravan who's able to pass and be an offensive hub, and have Solo Ball be kind of the beneficiary off of that. I'm very excited to see the step that he's able to take this season, possibly even getting into some All-American type candidacy talks, depending on how well he does, the step he takes, and all that. I think he's primed for that. Alongside of Alex Caravan, the steadying force of the team. As you mentioned, the depth. You bring in Malachi Smith and Silas Dimrick, both guys who have had previous success as point guards. Malachi Smith averaging 5 assists per game this past year at Dayton,
Hmm.
6 foot 170. He's a smaller guard, but he's got multiple years of experience of college basketball and been able to play at a very high level, distributing the basketball, moving around. And then the steadying factor, again, I say steadying factor of Silas Dimrick, who goes back to the Tristan Newton thought, the Stephon Castle thought of having a big guard who's able to initiate offense and guard multiple positions on the defensive end. So you bring in those 2 players. You have the step taken from Solo Ball. You have Alex Caravan, Mr. Everything, Mr. Steadying Force. That leaves you with Terrace Reed coming back at the post. It's going to be very interesting to see how they handle the post position. Terrace Reed returning. He started some games this past year. 7, almost 8 rebounds a game, almost 2 blocks per game. Very steady, very big presence on the block. How's the depth look? Will Eric Reeby be able to come up and take in those minutes? He struggled a little bit with some confidence in high school, struggled a little bit with injuries in high school. We'll see the step that he's able to take coming into this season for UConn and what their depth looks like. And then I'm also very interested to see their wing, how they stagger their wing minutes. Who is the player that's able to step up in that wing role? Will the Jalen Stewart, Jaden Ross, will Braylon Mullen step into those minutes at the 3, because they very well could go 3 guards. They very well could have
Yeah.
Malachi Smith, Silas Dimmery, and Solo Ball there. So how do they stagger in those minutes with Mullins, Ross, and Stewart? Are they able to take that step forward to get into the lineup? But that's all good problems to have, because it provides depth and provides competition, and you can ride the hot hand at that moment. I really do question the bigs. I think the bigs is a situation worth monitoring. How does Terrace Reed play throughout the year,
Yeah.
stamina-wise, defensively wise, all that? Who steps up to be able to provide that depth there? But I think this team has perimeter depth 1 through 4. I think they have versatility matchup that they're able to play to 1 through 4. There's shot making. There's versatility on both sides of the basketball that can move the basketball. And guys that are primed to take steps, as you mentioned as well. I think this UConn team is very intriguing. And then you add in the Dan Hurley factor, 2 of the last 3 national championships, and all that. I think this UConn team is very interesting heading into the season. Not without questions, but very interesting talent-wise heading into the season.
Yeah, you bring up Reed, and obviously the common denominator in those championship teams was excellent play at the center position.
Mm-hmm.
And so for Reed, I think specifically when I talk about players stepping up, I mean, he was the Big East Sixth Man of the Year last year. Can he be that consistent force for 28, 27 minutes per game at the 5 spot and really lock it down to where you have him and Caravan on the court together for a significant amount of time, and that really holds up in the front court? Or, is he not quite, or maybe does he get in foul trouble? Do things happen with him to where he's not quite able to reach that point? I did want to ask you real quick before we move on, not too long on this, but Braylon Mullins, obviously the number 12 prospect and on Rivals in the country, coming in as a freshman. What are your just general expectations for him? Do you think he's able to come in and help this team significantly right away?
The biggest thing with Braylon Mullins is he going to make shots? That's kind of the great X factor coming into a college season, a freshman to a college, is will he be able to make shots? Braylon in high school solidified his his reputation as one of the better shooters, especially movement shooters
Mhm.
in the high school class, possibly the best movement shooter coming out in the 2025 class. Well, you look at the success Dan Hurley's had with his guys going back to Hawkins, Liam McNeely. They're all really good movement shooters. They're guys that are able to find their balance points, getting off of screens, getting into the shot, and pull gravity with what they do. It'll all be up to him whether or not to make the shots. If he's making shots, he's one of the an incredible asset, incredible value add, and somebody that NBA teams will be looking at closely. And that's going to be kind of what it all comes down to. Yes, he's a capable shooter. He was one of my first team All Americans this past year, voting for the Naismith Award in high school this past season due to what he was able to do. He's got more to his game than shooting. He's an athlete. He can straight line drive, get above the rim in traffic, moves the ball a little bit. He's got nice length, positional size, and all that stuff. So the looking at what he has this season, you project him to be able to start, and you project him to be able to get to the lineup. But I think the success that he has will all come to the value of, is he making the shots?
Yeah. All right, St. John's up next, our number 2 team here in the Big East. Obviously, Rick Pitino's back. Had a fantastic year last year, 31-5 overall, 18-2. Makes it to the second round of the NCAA tournament. Zuby Ejiofor is back, and then they got a lot of transfers here where we're going to have to see what this team looks like as he pieces it together. We know what Rick Pitino teams are. We know what his trademark is. We know how they're going to look in terms of pace, in terms of what they do, but in terms of players and how they play together, this is a very, very different team, and it's an interesting challenge to try to predict, right? Like try to project how they look together. I mean, from the guard play even down, to the front court here, you had like Dylan Mitchell, you had Bryce Hopkins, you had all these guys. I think they're good, but I've seen like a range of like in terms of across the country from like the 5 to like 15 range for them, which is a little bit of a wide variance. Where do you start with St. John's and what your thoughts are on what they can be this year?
I think you have to start with Zuby Ejiofor. He's coming in. He's going to have first team all Big East, possible player of the year type aspirations coming off of a season. He averaged almost 15 points and 8 rebounds per game. What he brings them is an offensive presence on the block. You have somebody that you can kind of run some offense around on the block, and you can establish one-on-one where he's able to create advantages consistently on the block. You bring that back, there's comfort in knowing that you have that. As you notice these past couple of years, the past 2 or 3 seasons, the teams that have bigs that you can trust on the block make it far in the tournament. Those are all the teams that you have, dating back to Zach Edey. You mentioned Donovan Clingan earlier. This past year with Florida, what they had winning the national championship as well. The teams that have a guy that you can trust on the block, that can create advantages consistently on the block, have done well. You have that in Zuby Ejiofor. Now, as you mentioned as well, the question marks surrounding that. You have Bryce Hopkins. The last full season he played, which was 2 seasons ago, averaged almost 16 and 9 a game, which was in this league in Providence. He could be a factor. You have Dylan Mitchell coming in, a previous top 10 type recruit and all that. He's in his final year of college, year 4 of college. The defensive presence he brings, and what does he provide? He's not going to be a focal point, but he's going to be somebody who's able to stagger minutes and give different looks when it comes on the defensive side, especially his ability to slide, his ability, weak side shot blocker, and all that. There's some interesting aspects there. My question with this team is, what does the backcourt look like? You have a steadying presence with Isaiah Sellers coming in who can shoot the ball, 40% type guy with 6'5", 6'6" type size. But Josan Sannon and Ian Jackson, what steps do they make? Both averaged around 12 points per game this past year. Josan shot about 37% from 3. Ian Jackson shot about 39% from 3 at their previous stops. What does the ball movement look like? Both of those guys, their freshman seasons, ball-dominant players that could be a little inefficient at times. How do they take the step forward? What does their game streamlined look like? Rick Pitino's had a ton of personalities in his time. How do these two personalities match toward the greater good of the team is going to be very interesting to watch because they are uber talented. They're going to find themselves, if things go well, onto NBA draft boards. They're going to be monitored how this season goes by the NBA personnel as well. How do they mesh, but only what type of steps do they take year 1 to year 2 on the college will be very interesting to see how that looks. Rick Pitino famously said this past summer, there are no real point guards in college basketball anymore. Um, he's got a group full of guys, a backcourt full of guys who can create advantages on the offensive end off the live dribble, guys who can provide some spacing. You add Isaiah Sellers to the mix, who can shoot the ball. This past year, obviously, the St. John's team, pretty putrid shooters when it came as a
Yep.
whole.
Horrible.
This season in the offseason, Isaiah Sellers comes in, as we said, Ian Jackson 39%, Josan Sandin 35%. So the spacing will be interesting to see how that kind of plays out. They'll have different looks in the front court with the physicality, with the defensive movement, with Zuby in there as well. I think this season is going to come down to the steps that Josan and Ian are able to make.
I think you worded it well where Rick Pitino said there's no true point guards in college basketball anymore. He didn't try to go find one. He went and found some scorers that can, like you said, create advantages, but they're not. I mean, they're not true point guards. And like you said, maybe they just don't exist in his head anymore. But all these guys can score the ball, and all these guys can shoot. So that's going to be a boost to their at least shooting percentage on the perimeter. But like you said, I think a lot of this comes back to edge of four in the post. I think looking for him, playing through him. I do think Ian Jackson, just having seen him in like high school and then at North Carolina, I just think he has so much raw talent and speed and just his ability to score. I do have faith in Jackson probably the most, but he's got to put it together. He's got to be able to play at this level consistently and for this coach consistently. So it's going to be a tall task for him, but I do think St. John's, like I said earlier, I've seen them between 5 and 15 in the country. I'm not sure where I'd fall on that. I haven't done like my preseason rankings yet, but I think somewhere in that 10 range would probably be fair in my head. Just because there are so many transfers, and I just need to see them. We know Patino's going to win. We know they're going to win games, but I just need to see the transfers kind of on the court together before I can fully buy in on what we're selling.
One player I'm interested to see kind of how his role carves out this season is Dylan Darling, the transfer. Positional size, he's got steadying factor on ball, able to kind of move the ball, pass it a little bit as a bigger size point guard. I'm eager to see if he's able to take that step, transferring up, an up transfer level wise. Eager to see if he's able to take that step and carve out minutes within the lineup to kind of settle things down around him. He had a very big season this past year, earning a transfer to St. John's. So he's a player that if he's able to hit his top end, he's able to really provide some help and something that this team could possibly need. I'm very interested to see what his season looks like.
Yeah. All right, number 3, Creighton, team who, loses Ryan Kalkbrenner and has to kind of rebuild its team to a degree. They went to the portal, but I think they did a really good job in the portal. This is a team that kind of fits what I imagine Greg McDermott roster looking like. I think that I know they're, like you said earlier, kind of in the top 25 range in terms of 20 to 25 in a lot of places. Where do you start with Greg McDermott's team as we look at them? Again, like I said, a very different looking Greg McDermott team from last year.
For sure. I think Greg McDermott went out and targeted positional size of guys who can shoot the ball, spread the floor, but also make plays with the ball in their hand. I think bringing in Owen Freeman is going to be a very interesting, aspect when it comes to play around the rim. You look at everything. Josh Dix, I think, is the kind of the focal point that you start off with. 14.4 points on 42% this past year. I think he'll have first team All Big East type of aspirations when it comes down to it. Big time shooter, but he's also a guy who can make a read with the ball in his hands. He's played a little bit of pick and roll, and he's somebody who can move the basketball. Over 2 assists per game this past year while shooting. While scoring 14.4 a game. Coming into the spread offense, I think there could be another step possibly in line for him this coming season. And then you have the step from Jackson McAndrew, a 6'9", 6'10" player who's able to dribble, shoot, and pass as well. Plays along the perimeter. He's a very good shooter. Even for somebody that's not even 6'10", but he'd be a good shooter if he was 6'2", let alone being 6'10". He's able to dribble to an advantage, and he can move the ball and run some fun things off of him with that. You also bring in Blake Harper, MEAC freshman of the year, 19 points, averaged over 3 assists per game. He can put the ball in his hand, 40.4% from 3 as well. So you have those 3 guys, 6'6", 6'10", and then Blake Harper as well, a taller player who's able to fluidly move around positionally while adding size and length and all that, while able to be able to space the floor. Owen Freeman down low. You have Nick Graves coming in from Charlotte. He averaged 17 points per game, 17 plus points per game this past year. He's not going to have to be that dynamic of a player. He's just going to be able to get them into sets. He's going to have to be able to make a shot when the ball rotates back around, get them into sets, take care of possessions, and all that. And then you have a little bit of depth coming in, and more size coming in as well. When you have Isaac Trout, a former top 100 type player, you have Jason Green, who started some games this past year in the 6'9" range as well, and then a transfer coming in from Miami and Austin Schwartz, a former top 100 type recruit as well. Couldn't quite get off the ground this past season at Miami, but he brings somebody who's comfortable on the ball, 6'4", 6'5" range, can really shoot it, score, create advantages in that way. I think this is an intriguing mix of players, as you said. I think we saw what Greg McDermott's vision was with the team, being able to bring in length, positional size, and multiple players who can create offense and shoot the ball as well. Make decisions with the ball in their hands. You have a rim protector. You have a guy who's had experience at the point guard position, and then a little bit of depth when it comes again to that positional versatility and fluidity. I think there could be some very fun offense that we see from this Creighton team with some massive offensive outbursts potentially scoring the basketball. And if these guys are able to find continuity, if Blake Harper is able to take that up transfer coming in from the MEAC to the Big East and find his role there, he's not going to have to average 19 a game again. But if he's able to find comfort in his role, Josh Dix is able to take that step, Jackson McAndrew take that step. You get the depth coming in from the Trouts and Schwartz and Jason Greens of the world. I think this team could be very, very interesting and a tough matchup, tough to defend when it comes to that type of spacing and creativity on offense.
Yeah, the past 5 years he's had Ryan Kalkbrenner, and so we kind of knew what to expect going into every season in terms of the focal point. Obviously, Stephen Ashworth was also a huge piece of what they did offensively. It was a great point guard for them. They brought in Pop Isaacs last year, but he obviously got hurt, didn't play for a majority of the season. I think they're going to be a lot more unpredictable this year. Last year they ended the season 33rd in offensive rating on KenPom. Like, I think they should surpass that by a pretty comfortable margin here. This should be a top 20, top 25 offense in the country. And I think you worded it well in terms of the versatility that they have now and the ways that they can attack you. You know, when you watched them last year, it was very traditional, whether it was post entry, whether it was a high ball screen, you knew where the attack was coming from, and a lot of times you couldn't stop it. Kalkbrenner's too big, Ashworth is too good. Like, they're able to find shooters and whatnot. But with this team in particular, I look at, like you said, Graves. I look at Harper as like guys that are complementary pieces that can really hold their own and score the ball. And if Dix is the focal point of this offense, which we expect him to be, like, that takes a lot of pressure off of those two guys who I know can score the ball at a high level. Owen Freeman, coming over from Iowa, averaged 17 a game. Like, I know he can finish and score the ball at a high level. So the versatility is going to be really encouraging. Like I said, I expect top 20 offense from Creighton this year. The defense we'll have to see. You don't have, that's the flip, the other side of the coin is you don't have Kalkbrenner in the middle, just standing there and blocking shots and being a tremendous defender. So how are they going to mask that? I think they're a top 25 team, but I need to see the defense again. That's probably my question mark. I don't really have a question about the offense. I think they're going to be awesome, but what do they look like defensively, and can they stay in front of the ball, in the non-conference, and then once they get into conference play?
No, 100%. I think the offensive upside of this team is massive. I'm interested to see that they talk about watching NBA teams. This is a league pass team. This is somebody that you want to, yep. If they're playing, that you want to put it on because you never know how many points they can score. The offensive outburst of this Creighton team, the potential is very high on any given night.
Yeah. All right. We have different number fours. So I guess we can both just spend a minute or two on each one of our number fours. I'll throw it to you first. You have Marquette at the 4th spot here. What do you like about Marquette this year?
Well, Marquette loses a lot from this past year's team. Let's start there. But they've also shown us that after they lose a significant amount of players, their system brings the next man up. And, they recruit high school kids. Not many people leave. They develop the high school kids that they bring in. And by the time they're sophomores, juniors, and seniors, those high school players have developed within the system. They have an understanding of their role, and they're going to be able to step in. This next year, I think Chase Ross and Royce Parham are the two players to kind of watch. Parham averaged, what do we got, 5.1 points on 14 minutes per game this past year. Former top 100 type recruit. He had a very, very good showing at the USA Basketball U19 trials this summer, making a finalist to possibly potentially be on that team. I think that really built his confidence. He showed what he could bring as an offensive type player. He can stretch the floor. He can put it on the floor. He can create advantages with the ball in his hand. And he's got a lot of talent and ability. I think a step from him is in the cards. Getting him up to a double-figure type score, getting him into some efficiency, getting him into some interesting roles. Then you have Chase Ross, the returning leading scorer at 10.5 points per game, 37% shooter from three this past year. I think a notable step from him is next in line as the backcourt kind of clears out from without him. There's an interesting freshman class here. I'd be interested to see what kind of, just kind of what kind of steps Michael Phillips is able to kind of do. What we're looking at from Adrian Stevens, I think either of those players could possibly jump in the mix. And then Demarius Owens is kind of the guy coming in from a reserve role into a possible fixture role. 6'6". He's a very high IQ player. He can toggle in between both forward spots. You can put the ball in his hand to be able to create advantages. He's an athlete, so defensively he plays with a lot of toughness and physicality. And you have a five-man who can stretch the floor with Ben Gold. Rim protection is going to be a question, obviously, with Gold and what he brings with the backups. You're going to have to rebound well from the guard and wing positions as well with Gold. But his ability to space the floor and pull gravity as a shooter will be very interesting and possibly open things up for guys. But there's a lot of interesting looks that they can bring, with the inverted nature of what you have from Demarius Owens as a possible ball-in-hand type playmaker. You have some shooting from Michael Phillips. Adrian Stevens, another 6'4", big, physical, strong guard. Royce Parham able to make a play with the ball in his hands. And then Sean Jones coming back out of Ohio. He's a smaller guard at 5'10" or so, but he's got a lot of gumption. He's got a very real it factor to his game. So bringing him in, seeing how he's able to hold up within the Big East. This team has talent. Obviously, Shaka's been there. They have continuity when it comes to guys who've been in the system before. And they have some interesting pieces. But just like you mentioned previously, guys are going to need to take steps. There's going to have to be guys that take steps here into some significant roles and you see what they look like as a feature team. But for me, the reason why Marquette's on here, Shaka Smart's track record of being able to build teams, put them together, put his team in advantageous situations to win games. So for me, that's why I kind of have Marquette at the 4th spot, probably on the positive side of the bubble when it comes tournament time.
Yeah, I mean, if for Marquette, for me, the reason I don't have them in the top 4 is, I mean, we talked about not adding a transfer. Obviously they like what they have and whatnot, but I understand it because Shaka Smart, we know defensively is going to have a top 20, top 25 defense in the country every year. Like that's just kind of what he's going to do. They were 26th in defense last year, 35th in offense. Obviously a first round in an NCAA tournament team. I'm excited to see Chase Ross in this and see what they have. I mean, because they just have a lot of returning talent, and then they have a good freshman class that I think can help them out. So we will see how they do. My number 4 is Providence. Kim English is going to have to prove it this year. Like this is a big year for him and this Providence program because I think they went out and they got some dudes in the portal, and I think that they obviously got the number 40 overall prospect in Jameer Jones. So I think from a talent perspective, there's no reason why they should not finish top 5 in this conference. I have them 4th here. They return Corey Floyd, 9 points per game, 25 starts. And then in the portal, like I said, Jason Edwards is someone that I've been high on since his North Texas days, but seeing him at Vanderbilt last year, I was like, okay, he did that in the best conference of this century, pretty much. Like he was able to score. He ended the year 17 points per game, 35% from 3, 50% from 2. And I think Jason Edwards, while he is small, he's a small guard that scores, I think he raises the floor of every team that he's on immediately. Because I just think he's that good of a scorer. So you have him in place. You get what you can from Jameer Jones. I don't know exactly what to expect from him. Maybe you can talk a little bit about this, but I loved him as like an athlete, as like a do-it-all kind of guy, like a motor guy. Wasn't a great shooter when I watched him, and so I'm interested to see how he kind of fits in here. But then you talk about, I mean, Duncan Powell from Georgia Tech, who averaged 12 a game. Jalen Sellers from UCF didn't play last year, but before that had 16 points per game. And then Big Oswin returns. I will not attempt to say his last name. Returns as a big on the inside for them, 24 starts. So again, this is a year Kim English should be in the top 5 of this conference, should be in the top half. And I mean, coming off of the year they had last year, I think it's very fair to put pressure on him and say, all right, you got to do something this year. And I think they have the talent to do that.
Yeah, they were my number 5 team. When you look at it, I think bringing in Jalen Sellers and Duncan Powell, they've had success previously at a high level program. The 2 players I'm looking at, though, you mentioned Jason Edwards. He's one where he's been 17 a game this past year at Vanderbilt, having Vanderbilt have a very positive season, making it into the NCAA tournament this past year. In the SEC, he's just a dynamic guard on the ball, puts incredible pressure on the defense, and is very confident. I think Big Oswin's in for a huge step this season. I think he's somebody that could make a run at Big East all defensive team. In just 20 games this past year, 1.6 blocks per game. He is a highly explosive player. If you remember in high school, he went viral by going up off a vert for a dunk and honey dipping, holding his elbow on the rim there. A very, very, very explosive player in the middle there. I think you're going to see a pretty big step from him coming into his sophomore season, the freshman to sophomore jump there. So you have the point guard in Edwards, you have the 5-man in Oswin, and then you have a mixture of guys in the middle who have experience at the high major level and all that. What does Daquan Davis bring as well in the backcourt? Is a Jason Edwards, Daquan Davis backcourt, the size-wise, what does that look like? But there's a lot of dynamic there's a lot of dynamic presence here for this Providence team. And there's what will the depth look like? The questions are there, but however, I'm looking at Jason Edwards, I'm looking at Oswin, I'm looking to see how those 2 look because they could be a very, very, very dynamic duo within the Big East, possibly one of the better combos in the league.
Yeah. All right. There are our top 4, top 5s, really. Now let's get to some superlative picks, and we're gonna start off with a sleeper pick that we did not have in our top 4, top 5. What is a team that you're looking for here? Actually, I'll go first because I'm gonna dig really deep for this sleeper, and it kind of goes back to what I said at the very beginning of this, where I think the bottom of this conference is actually better than what it was, maybe. So I'll go down the list, and I'm gonna pass up the teams that I didn't include here. I'm gonna pass up Xavier, who I expect to. I actually have like 6th in the conference. I'm gonna pass up some of the other teams. I'm gonna go all the way down to Georgetown, and I say all the way down, but I think there's like actual upside here to where they ended the year 90th in KenPom last year. I wouldn't be shocked at all if they ended the year like top 75 in KenPom. Now, I understand Thomas Sorber was a big piece of them last year, but they returned Malik Mack. Then they went and got KJ Lewis from Arizona, Langston Love from Baylor, who has had his injury problems, but when he's on the court, I think he's a legitimate starter at the high major level. And then Jeremiah Williams started 26 games at Rutgers last year, another experienced guard. Like all those guys are experienced, they're old, and I think at the very least from a backcourt perspective, I know what they have. Again, front court, replacing Sorber, like I don't know 100%, but if I had to bet on a team that maybe surpasses my expectations and surpasses what I think a lot of where they'll start the year in terms of Big East predictions, I'm going to go Georgetown and Ed Cooley. I think they can maybe surprise some people this year.
Yeah, and I think they're in an interesting spot. You have the year 1 to year 2 up transfer step, Malik Mack. I'd be very interested to see him have a pretty big year this year. And you have former top 100 players, Deshaun Harris-Smith, Vince Iwachukwu, Julius Halfanea.
Yep.
You have former top 100 guys on this roster with the experience that you mentioned. Ed Cooley has won before. I just think that I think they're in an interesting spot, and I agree with you that Georgetown's a team, a swing team within this league.
Yeah. All right, who do you got?
For me, I'm going Butler. I'm very intrigued by the portal class that Butler brought in. I think when you start with a guy like Michael Ajayi, who came in from Gonzaga, when you look at what he did at Pepperdine 2 years ago, maybe it didn't quite get off the floor this past season at Gonzaga, but 17 points and almost 9 rebounds a game 2 years ago at Pepperdine. What he brings, he brings somebody who knows how to score the basketball in a very efficient manner. He's able to put pressure on the defense consistently with his off-ball movement, getting into weak spots of the defense and scoring the basketball, but also rebound. He's a very, very, very good rebounder. Even this past year, over 5 a game in the minutes he had at Gonzaga. Very excited to see what he does in his last year of basketball. With what he's able to bring to the table for this Butler team. I think he could take a big step getting back toward the Pepperdine days. But then you also have the 5-man position. Drayton Jones, who averaged 13 points and almost 2 blocks per game this past year at South Carolina State at 6'10", 240-ish, along with Johan Traore, who's a former top 50 type of recruit as well, started off at Auburn coming in. I think that 5-man mix, along with Michael Ajayi at the 4, is a very intriguing big man combination. Jalen Jackson coming from IPFW, averaged 19 a game this past year, 3.1 assists. 2 seasons ago, he shot 40% from 3. Probably somewhere in between what he did in the high 30s is there. But I think he's a very steadying factor, somebody who's had 3 years of college basketball experience, a veteran presence coming in and being able to make decisions on the ball. Really like the prospects of what Jalen Jackson is going to be able to do within this role on this Butler team. Then you add in guys like a Finley Bizjack, a Jamie Kaiser, guys who've been there before, ready to take a step forward into their roles, ready to take steps into kind of, what they are as players. They're not going to need to be main focuses, but they are going to need to make shots. They are going to need to be able to play a little bit of defense. So if those 2 guys are able to take steps, you have the veteran presence that you bring with the Jalen Jackson. You have the front court, which I think is going to be a sleeper front court that Butler has as well. I really like kind of the pieces of this team a lot, how they fit together, and a little bit of the depth that they have, and a little bit of these guys are able to reach toward their top end ceiling. I think that this team could surprise some people with what it kind of the collective whole of what they have looks like.
Yeah, I'm really high on this Butler team as well. That transfer class is really, at the very least, it might be a league pass team. Like that might be a fun Jalen Jackson, Finley Bizjack. Like that's gonna be a fun team. Butler as well. So I like it. All right, let's go to freshman of the year predictions. I know we have 2 different ones here. I'll start. Braylon Mullins is gonna be my pick, and it's the easy pick, I guess, because I think UConn's going to be really good, and I think he's going to play, and he's going to get good looks, and he's going to make shots. Like I think, the Liam McNeely thing where he like missed open shots at a rate where we weren't expecting. Like he still shot the ball fine, but it wasn't like we thought he was going to come in and shoot like 40-45% maybe. I think that's what Braylon Mullins is actually going to do. I think he's going to come in and just make shots, and on a team that has a lot of creators and ball handling. And we talked about Caravan, and we talked about this team. I think Mullins can just step in and make shots. That's all I need him to do. He does that. Not saying someone can't pass him up, but if he goes and averages, if he has a good year scoring the ball and makes shots on one of the best teams in the country, I think Mullins will get us. That's my freshman of the year in the Big East.
Mullins, top 15 recruit. Mullins was a McDonald's All-American, obviously coming into one of the best teams in the country. I think that's a good pick. That's probably going to be most people's pick.
It's a safe pick.
I'm looking a little bit different at it. Obviously, you have Villanova coming in. You got a new coach, all kinds of new players and everything. Caden Lewis is somebody that a lot of people are looking at. I'm looking on down the lineup a little bit. I think Matthew Hodge is a player. He's going to be my pick for freshman of the year. He redshirted this past season due to some eligibility questions and all that. Now he's ready to come back in this year as a freshman. Former top 100 recruit, 6'8", strong frame, and his feel for the game is absolutely off the charts. He's able to dribble, shoot, and pass into advantages. He can spread the floor with his shooting ability. You can put the ball in his hand, and he can make reads. He's kind of able to be that offensive hub on the court when you have people around him who are more offensive minded and scoring the basketball. He's the calming factor of somebody who could make decisions with the ball in his hand, play efficiently, rebound the basketball with positional size. His dad is probably the best player ever in Old Dominion college history. 2,000 plus points, over 1,000 rebounds, school's all-time leading scorer, all that. So he comes from basketball lineage. He obviously his younger brother Jaden Hodge this past year for Belgium and the FIBA stuff. But Matthew, in his own right, you look at kind of these type of players that Villanova's had, looking at like the Cole Swiders of the world and guys like that. that's the archetype that you're looking at with this. He's maybe a little bit more physical than that, maybe a little bit better rebounder than that, but he's able to make a decision with the ball in his hands. I could see Villanova, if they're able to have the season that people think they're having to have, Matthew Hodge having a really big factor in that for them.
Yeah. All right, coach of the year. We have the same pick here. It's Dan Hurley for UConn. I mean, from just a coaching, we're both just really, really high on Dan Hurley as a coach. How can you not be really at this point? But it is interesting because you do have the Pitino aspect of it now, to where you have two Hall of Fame coaches in this conference and two of them battling it out. And it's going to be interesting to see because ultimately it might just be whoever wins the conference between these two because they're that good of coaches. And I think it's probably just whoever wins the conference wins the coach of the year race. Like, I don't know if it's that simple, but I have UConn winning the conference. So I think Hurley will get it.
Yeah, I think Hurley's coming into the season with a chip on his shoulder. Back-to-back national championships this past year didn't quite go maybe as expected or as they wanted this past year. He revamped in the portal, got a lot of talent on the roster, built some depth, and I think you're going to see him coming in with an extra little chip on his shoulder this season to really, really flex with what this team has. I think there's an ability to be able to stack up some wins. I think all the top five accolades are warranted, and if we're predicting this team to be a top five team, I think that preseason, looking at it, Dan Hurley has to be the guy.
I can't imagine what Dan Hurley looks like with another chip on his shoulder. That is a terrifying thought. He's going to run out of shoulders.
Terrifying for the college basketball world.
Yes. All right. Coach, player of the year in the Big East. We have different picks. I got Zuby Ejiofor from St. John's. I think from a usage perspective and just what the team needs from him, I think Ejiofor is just going to be like every single time down the court, he's getting a touch. Every single time down the court, you're going to feel his presence, whether it's on the glass or in the post, making shots, getting other people involved. I just think Ejiofor for a Rick Pitino team is going to be exactly what he wants, and he's going to put up even better numbers than he did last year, which was still fantastic. I think it was 15-8. So Zuby Ejiofor is going to be my player of the year prediction. St. John's, I think he's going to have probably an All-American type season.
100%. I think that's a great pick. And if St. John's is going to be as good as they want to be this year, Zuby's going to have to be the central focal point of that. And Rick Pitino brought back one player for a reason, and brought back one starter, I should say, for a reason.
Yeah.
Zuby's somebody that he really trusts. So for me, differing outlook. Josh Dix is the player I'm looking at as possible as the preseason player of the year. Stepping into a Creighton team, I have a feeling he's going to be the focal point of what the team brings and needs. They don't bring back any full-time starters on this Creighton team. You have Jackson McAndrew, Jason Green, who started a handful of games both this past year. Josh Dix, I believe, is going to step into a primary role. Josh Dix is somebody 14.4 points per game, 42% from three this past year, but I think he's also able to make decisions with the ball in his hand. I'm curious to see what it looks like, what type of role that they give him, if they give him the ability to play out some pick and rolls, if they give him the ability to kind of do some secondary type of initiation within the flow of their offense. The spacing is going to be very real at Creighton. There's going to be some offensive fluidity, as we talked about earlier. And I think with Josh Dix, his ability to kind of come in and be that offensive hub, be the central guy at the top of the the depth chart that people are looking at the scouting report, and still be able to perform. He did it a little bit this past year. I think there's a step in there. I think there's a chance that he pops up onto some NBA draft radars with his ability to kind of shoot, with his ability to do some creation stuff and move the ball. And I'm very interested to see the year that he has. I think that he's going to be a central figure in the season that Creighton has. We talked about them being from the 15 to 25 type of range. This season coming up, with him being at the top of the scouting report, I think the 14.4 is the low bar of the offensive output that he can have, but maintaining his career 40% three-point shooting and then continuing to up the assist rate as well. I think there's just some untapped stuff there. Despite the season that he had this past year at Iowa, I think there's some untapped stuff there still that Greg McDermott could very well unlock. And my preseason player of the year, Josh Dix, for the Big East.
I love it. Love the pick. There's our Big East preview. Here we are on October 14th, and the Big East is going to be one of the Most interesting conferences to watch, as always, because you, at the very least, have Hurley and Patino at the top here. Just always fun to watch them coach. And then, like we talked about, a lot of really interesting players in this conference across the board that we're excited to see. A lot of interesting transfers, players moving over. So we're excited to see it. Thank you all for joining us. Leave us a like, comment, share, subscribe if you have not already. That's Jamie Shaw. I'm Matthew Brune. We'll be back with another conference preview later in the week, so stay tuned for that. We will talk to y'all then.
See you next time.